action. Now, these are the snap-on marker commands. This is some actual robot art made by students. It is very, very, very similar to what you just saw of Bbot in terms of basic functionality. The key difference is you have some, for lack of a better word, extra hardware, little things you can snap onto it to make it function somewhat differently. It also has that very fun dance command. So let's take a look at the art right now.
Ready?
Those of you who could hear over the din of the students might have noticed it's playing a little bit of a music or a tune in the background. It's a very musical bot. So this is another one of what we call, for those of you who entered the room just now, what you missed is that we're going over screen-free robots, robots that are self-contained, that require no use of a device. We've gone over Bbot. Tailbot, again, very similar in terms of its functionality. Now let's talk about Sphero Indy. Sphero is a very, very popular name right now in the educational robotics sphere. You're probably familiar with Sphero. Indy is something that is designed very, very specifically for the kindergarten through second grade market that I've discussed, though this is accessible enough for older children as it's more sophisticated. I've used it with fifth graders successfully, and I would recommend that you could do exactly the same. So the way Indy works is it reads colored tiles for visual programming. It scans the colors, and your commands are a little more sophisticated than what you saw with Bbot and what you saw with Tailbot. You have the basic directionals of forward and left and right, but you can also turn 45 degrees or dance or adjust the speed. It comes with an educator guidebook, and it gives you, you can purchase it with ideas on how to relate it to various topics, cross-curricular connections like math, science, etc. And this here is actually a program designed by fifth grade gifted and talented students, which I think really attests to Sphero Indy's versatility. So let's take a look at that right now.
Okay, go ahead. Very nice. Thank you.
Now, you may have noticed,
Okay, go ahead.
you may have noticed toward the on the purple tile, it did a little bit of a spin. That is Sphero Indy's dance. It's a very popular function. And again, versatile. I definitely recommend it throughout the entire elementary school levels. Let's move on. Now this is Intellino. Intellino, even though I said we're focusing on screen-free robots, this one works with an app as well, and we're going to delve into that a little bit later. But let's talk about Intellino's screen-free capabilities. So basically what we're looking at is a really high-tech variant on the classic model train kit. If we use the screen-free approach to it, we're using action snaps. And what we're basically doing is snapping in colored tiles onto the tracks to give it specific commands, forward, backward, adjusting the speed, etc. And the apps we're going to get into a little later. This one is versatile enough to work as far up from elementary to college level because it can teach block-based and Python programming. There will be more on that later. But again, since we're talking about screen-free options, here's an example of how students constructed this to, in essence, make a kind of loop. So very useful for teaching basic rudimentary computer science concepts, algorithms, loops. Here's an example of one such loop. Back again. And let's move on to the next section. Now, I had an audience member talk to me about Scratch earlier. Scratch, as we know, is a form of block-based or visual coding, an example of which is right here. The classic Hello World program represented in block-based code, series of icons connected together. So when we talk about block-based coding, Scratch, Tinker, anything that provides students with a very, very highly visual introduction to code, I find this best for the first-time coders in grade 3 to 5. Those of you with children have probably almost certainly talked to them or they've talked to you about Scratch. So for a Scratch user, for someone who's got their feet wet, this next series of robots is a great starting point to go from. Now, most of you are probably familiar with Dash. For those who don't know, Dash has two options. You're going to see a visual flowchart approach as one of the apps. This is over here, which, while not block-based coding, is very visual, and the flowchart arrangement does help teach computational thought. The actual block-based app you can see right next to it, and you'll note the similarities to Scratch or Tinker. Now, what you may not know about Dash is that you can add Lego attachments to build on top of it, and there is a remote control guide. For teachers or parents who are interested in homeschooling, I highly recommend the curriculum guide and the challenge cards for the kids available. It gives you a lesson to follow and a card with an assignment for them to do, which makes these very versatile for the education environment and homeschool. Now here's Dash in action. There's my two daughters and I going at it, and I can guarantee if they can touch it without destroying it, then you gotta admit this is a good program. So let's have a look at it.
So I built on top of this robot. I had just built this little hill with a flower, and I thought, hey, that's a cool idea, a robot, but it has like a little garden on top of it, so it's double useful. Plus, it looks really cute. Plus, you could do useful things with it, like you could use this thing right here, which is the plow. It's sort of like you're mowing the lawn in a way, and this is the lawn, some of the lawn, and you're plowing, but just say this is the lawn and this is the lawnmower.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is connect, and we're gonna run a program. Everybody ready for that?
Yeah.
Here we go. Now we're about to run the program. Step back. It's going to use the plow.
And the ball, or the grass, is a garden.
There we go. And there's our kitty. Okay. Now, some of you may have noticed there's an attachment to it. There's a plow. You can purchase several attachments to sort of elaborate on your little friend. We built the Lego on top using a blue attachment that snaps on and lets you plug in the Lego pieces. A plow can be purchased separately. You'll see a pair of bunny ears a little bit later. So what I like about Dash is, in addition to teaching block-based coding, in terms of the actual hardware and scalability and building upon it, extremely versatile. And we'll discuss that in some depth a bit later. Please bear with me. And now we're going to talk about Python. Now, Python is, of course, quite a buzzword you see lately among educational computer science toys. Most of you are familiar with it if you're here, but again, Python's very popular because of a syntax is very much like written English, and that's an important thing to consider when you're dealing with first-time users, when you're dealing with kids who are just looking to graduate from block-based code. It's an easy transition from block-based code to Python because block-based code has commands written in simple English, and Python follows kind of a similar syntax, so it's not too much of a leap. It is open source, so it's free to use and lots of available educational resources online. That means that whatever your child learns about Python using the robot, they can find a plethora of resources online to supplement it. And of course, it's versatile. It can be used for web development, game design, data science. So let's delve into the robots that teach Python. And here's a quick introduction.
Hooray for Python! Yeah!
In case you missed it, there we go.
Hooray for Python! Yeah!
Okay.
Hooray!
So let's start simple. Edison is one of the most versatile robots you're going to see in that it not only scans barcodes to run programs for your most basic users, it has a block-based icon option, like with Scratch, with Tinker, and it has its own EdPy model. That's Edison Python, which teaches Python for a very simple beginner. As you can see here, the entire chassis is Lego compatible, and here's just a basic example of them doing a sumo wrestling match. This is one of the more popular things I've done with my kids. And we have a winner. There you go. So let's take a look at EdPy for Python. This is basically a look at the EdPy environment. If you look carefully, you're seeing commands like ed.playBeep. I'm starting on line 14. If you want to follow along, I'll point it out. Line 14 is here. And you're seeing commands like ed.playBeep, ed.leftLED, basically things that approximate the sort of functions you'd see in Python. It's its own sort of variant on Python, but accessible, and the commands are all unique to the robots, so they make common sense. You're not starting from scratch, and that's one of the things I like about this. Some of these functions, these commands, they're very self-evident. Play beep, you know what it means. Left LED, well, we know what that means. So that makes it very accessible for the young Python learner. And Intolino again. Remember, I promised you the train had its own scripting environment. Everyone remember the train, right? So with this one, this is its own app that teaches Python scripting. What's great about both Edison and Intolino the train is because they offer these environments, they really help a student go straight up to college with us, learning Python in this, giving them something to supplement with it. If you're not sure where to start with teaching Python with a robot, between the two of these, I may recommend that EdPy is a bit more accessible than Intolino, but it's a nice progression. But having said that, let's get to something that really shows you some accessibility with Python. Now this is Pixel. It's a dog robot that features a remote control option. It does have block-based coding, and it has an interactive step-by-step Python lessons for coding. Now, you connect to it with its own individual Wi-Fi access, but what I love best about this particular robot, there's a tutorial. When you open the app, and the app is free, and the app is hosted online, it tells you step-by-step what command to write first, second, next. It actually has you copy it. So if you're a just starter, if you're learning Python for the very, very, very first time, I cannot recommend Pixel enough. It holds your hand. Pixel also has the block-based coding for you to work with, so again, very versatile. So this is my favorite Python robot because it just basically takes you through a step-by-step process. And here it is making some friends.
Ready?
Yep.
Yeah. Dance, boy. Toby's like, get off of me!
Incidentally, it ended well. They became friends. So let's go into the final roundup. Now, I know that there's a lot of things right now. I've thrown a lot of options. It's going to be very hard to pick and choose. So I thought I'd give you a couple of guidelines as to what to look for if you're looking to buy your own robot. For the best screen-free coding nomination, it's a tie between Intolino and Tailbot for the reason both are highly tactile, for starters. They have very specific commands, and I recommend them for ease of use. The Tailbot, as you can see on the left, is the one that dances and has the snap-ons for drawing, so that's its specific strengths. How tactile it is, the hardware components. And Intolino we like a lot as a screen-free option, because of the simplicity of a color code. So if you're looking for a screen-free robot, my recommendation would be to start with Intolino or Tailbot. Here's some examples of kids coming up with their own creative uses for them, actually. So again, all this shot in an actual classroom. Enjoy. There you go.
It's gone.
You may have noticed that they put together a basic step-by-step program to accomplish that. Somebody laid out the maze, and they used a basic algorithm, so that's what that taught them. And here's another example of kids interacting with Intolino in a very creative manner.
Okay, go ahead.
There we go.
Okay, go ahead.
Now, without question, the most bang for your buck is Edison. This is the least expensive option you're going to find anywhere, and it does all the things that the big boys do. It's $59 for one. I believe an assortment of 3 is something like $110 or not much more. If you're a bargain hunter, this is the way to go. I can't, again, emphasize not only its accessibility of price, but its versatility. You can scan barcode options to run simple codes. Just click a button, run the code. You can graduate from there to block-based learning with its own modules, just a series of icons put together. And it has a Python learning, as we discussed. So if you're looking to buy a lot of something, maybe you have a large group of kids, you need a lot of robots, you can get a bunch of these very, very affordable, and there's volume discounts. But one for $59, you can't really go wrong. You will need to pay for AAA batteries for there to be used, but they do tend to last a while, I find. So that's the only other additional expense. These would run on, you can't charge them on a computer. You're going to have to buy some AAA batteries. Having said that, here's an example of a barcode. I've scanned it so that it avoids obstacles. It's surrounded by its friends. It made its escape, as you can see. Okay, so the most versatile award has got to go to Dash. Dash, because it enables Lego crafting. You've got your remote control option, the flowchart coding, and block coding. There's 4 or 5 endless different possibilities you can do with it. So if you're looking at, say, I would recommend if you're looking at grades 3, 4, 5, even second actually, and you want something that may be a little more pricey than Edison, but has a few more possibilities in terms of just building upon it and more basic options. Say you're not interested in Python, but you want a suite of more basic options, this is a great way to go. I'll show you a couple other things. You'll notice the bunny ears attachment on the second video, as I promised, and you'll see a few other things you can do.
Okay, so this one, for some reason, has bunny ears.
Bunny ears, and we're going to run a program that makes it change the light. We're going to run a program that makes it light on on the face, and it's going to talk. So let's be real quiet while it talks. Here we go. Out of the way, please.
Hi.
There's the light. And here's one more look with the much promised bunny ear attachments. So here's a cleaner view of the program we ran with the bunny ear attachments. When I hit play in the Blockly code, it's going to say hi. If you look carefully at the lights on the side of a robot, they'll turn blue and green. The center eye piece will blink, and it'll do one of the animations, the confidence dance. I'll hit play now.
Hi.
So again, at the risk of sounding redundant, when I say the most versatile, I again mean provided you're not interested in venturing into script coding, this has a lot of options for you, both in terms of building upon it and how you program it.
Okay, so this
So
one...
here's a... Now, if you really want something expressly for Python programming, I cannot say enough good things about Pixel. You also have the block-based coding, as you can see on this basic introduction. But again, what I like about its Python module is it has a 6-part tutorial that takes you step by step through what to write, how to write it. I've even been able to have a few of my first grade gifted and talented write Python script. So that's really saying something about how accessible this is. You want a gentle introduction to scripting? This is where I would go. And I'll just show you a bit of the PR here. Sorry. As noted, I forgot to mention, it does have sensors for touch, sound, so it responds to its outside environment. Now, there are a lot more options out there, but for today, I thought I'd start you with that. The point of this was to hopefully give you a sense of what's out there and give you a general guideline as to what robot might suit you and the children you work with. We have just enough time where I can take a couple of questions, and I really thank everyone for coming out today to Hope Conference. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay, we had a conference. So the question was, what's my approach of teaching Arduinos to kids? Actually, it's an interesting story because I've been thinking about that for a while. At least where I've been teaching, I found that COVID has had a very detrimental effect on teaching anything as complex as Arduino, and I do teach K5. So what I've had to do in the end is start with laying the groundwork with something as simple as Elenco snap circuits as kind of a gentle introduction before transitioning to Arduino. From there, I've started with something not unlike one of the vendors here has a very simple Arduino kit, like a breadboard and just a few basic things like making a fan spin. So I'm essentially replicating what's on Elenco snap circuits to an actual breadboard. But unfortunately, it's worth noting, and I've mentioned this in a podcast, that prior to what a lot of people think, we have a lot of children who aren't technically literate, who aren't more skilled than we are, and they need these gentle introductions right now, hence robots. Hence, I always start with that because it's tangible and accessible. Something I mentioned in the podcast is that the reason we have the image of the child being the more technically apt than the parents is now a myth because they're used to iPads or they're used to a tablet, something that just gives them everything at a fingertip touch. It doesn't require you to delve deeper. Those of us in the earlier generation had to learn to program the hard way. If we had our Commodore 64 or our PET and we were banging it out, we had to just sort of do trial and error. That's gone now. So we are actually, the older generation are the first that's more knowledgeable. Hence, I have to make things very simple. So that's a long way of answering. Arduino is something I have to build my way up to with baby steps. I usually recommend Elenco snap circuits as kind of a gentle entree. Okay. Yes. That's an interesting question. I would have to say that the oldest kits right now would be, it would be Dash. Dash has been around the longest. That was actually, of all the things I've seen here, that's been the first one I probably really ramped out, and that was about 15 years ago. Which just is, in my opinion, is very much a testament to their staying power. And remember, I described them as being the most versatile. That proves it. 15 years, 20 years later, they're not only not obsolete, they're as relevant as ever. Lots of people are using them. And they do have their own, something to mention, the Dash robots have their own Wonder League robotics competition. And what's great about that, as opposed to Lego Mindstorms, you don't have to travel to meet. You just videotape it, submit it. There's so much more in terms of making it easy logistically. So yeah, that's the oldest thing, and it's still one of the best. You'd think it would be able to get gotten old by now, but no. Yeah. We're running a little bit low on time, but we have time for a few more questions. Otherwise, thank you for coming out. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for coming out, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the rest of the conference.